Good afternoon. Welcome to Lunch with Books. If you would silence your cell phones at this time. Before I do the traditional announcements, I'd like to call up here Chuck Julian, Dr. Julian, to talk about the Friends.
Thank you, Sean. It's good to be with you today, and happy National Friends of Libraries Week. We brought along some special refreshments to share with you from our local Friends group. On your table, you have a printout of a newspaper article that has a connection with the Friends group and the Lunch with Books program. In 1973, the inaugural Lunch with Books program was done in conjunction with the Friends of the Library, and Paul Elbin was our first speaker from West Liberty. So you're welcome to take these with you if you'd like to. If you're not a friend of the library, I also have membership forms. Our treasurer is in the room today, Gene Finstein, and I know some of you are, and we thank you for that. So the first Friends was begun in 1922 in Illinois. We've not been that old, but our primary goal is to do everything that we can to support the success of this wonderful library. So please join us in achieving that mission. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Chuck, and thanks to the Friends for their support. Next Tuesday, our Halloween program will feature the Frankenstein radio play that you will see performed on this stage, starring some people you know, and that'll be at noon on the 28th. And on the 4th, our friend Alan Fitzpatrick returns. His new book is called Captured by the Mingo, Two Faces, and he did this work in collaboration with Native American sources. So, that is November 4th, which begins Indigenous Peoples Month. Today, to introduce our guests for the Wheeling Poetry Series, I would like to bring up our friend and the Poet Laureate of our state, and the man who organizes these programs for us, Mark Harshman.
Thank you, Sean, very much. Again, as I always say, we are so incredibly fortunate here in Wheeling and this part of the Ohio Valley to have the Ohio County Public Library. So let me second what Chuck just said. Please consider becoming a friend of the library. This is a terrific library, and we're so very lucky to have it. The programs that Sean helps to organize with Lunch with Books and supporting a program like this, the Wheeling Poetry Series, is just, there's not a city in the state that can boast anything better, and I'm not sure any place can boast its equal. I was just talking about the various poetry reading series that I was aware of from WVU and Marshall, et cetera, around the state, and we certainly are their equal here. And so hats off to Sean and everybody at the Ohio County Public Library. It is a treat to welcome my old and dear friend, Richard Hague. Dick here to read for you today. He is a marvelous poet. His accomplishments are too many to number, but I will share some of them with you. Dick is the author or editor of over 23 volumes, including with another friend, Sherry Cook Stanforth, the book Riparian, Poetry, Short Prose, and Photographs inspired by the Ohio River. You should all make sure you see it. He is a Northern Appalachian from Steubenville, Ohio. After teaching school in Cincinnati for over 45 years, he served as writer-in-residence and artist-in-residence at Thomas More University in Northern Kentucky. That's just across the river from Cincinnati, from 2015 to 2022. He was the 1985 Ohio Co-Poet of the Year. He has won the Appalachian Writers Association Poetry Book of the Year several years ago, and he was the winner of the 2013 Weatherford Award in Poetry from the Appalachian Studies Association, which is the crowning achievement for any writer in the Appalachian region. He now writes for and hosts an online writers' table sponsored by the Originary Arts Initiative. He was the 2021-22 president of the Literary Club of Cincinnati, the oldest continuing the oldest continuously operating organization of its kind in the United States. It's a very groovy place. If you ever get a chance to visit there, I got to read there, and it was like being royalty in the U.S. of A. He is currently helping edit Tributaria, an anthology of prose, poetry, and photography about the tributaries within the Ohio River's more than 200,000 square mile watershed. So another book you must see. And Dick's just been named as the Cincinnati and Mercantile Library Poet Laureate for the coming 2 years. Let me read for you just a short poem of Dick's called Legends. And if you're going to read it again, Dick, that's quite all right. Legends. The skin misses bone, however common to attach to, and flesh its scarlet waters. Broken fathers suffer through cold nights below the mills at Steubenville, numbed with wine, spitting in their fires, desperate with old lies. There's a story suckers drain a boy in an instant if he's careless, that a wild man lives below the bridge, that 3 black raccoons a season spells bad luck, that the carp won't bite when winds upstream, that a dead man in a barrel follows boats, that a girl who drowns won't wait for searchers, walks swollen up from the water and knows the talk of the crawfish, and keeps her lover all his years wanting wine or whiskey or a leaking skiff to drown from. Here's a poet for our Upper Ohio Valley, isn't it? No one has taken up poetry's mantle for this valley like Dick has, so please, a very, very warm welcome for Dick Hague.
Thank you, Mark. It's an honor to be here, and it's always good to come back up into the valley. You know, I live in Cincinnati now, but whenever anybody asks me where I'm from, I say, I'm from Steubenville, and they say, how did you get here? And I said, I just fell in the river and didn't drown. Just kept going until I washed up here. So I will be reading some Ohio River poems and some Steubenville poems and a few others. So when I was in college, you know, I'd come home and I'd try to find a job. And one summer, 2 summers, I worked for the Penn Central Railroad out of Weirton Junction. And 1 year I worked at Wheeling Steel in the brick department for a little while. Here's a poem about that. Brick department, Wheeling Steel. Jesus, it was hot in there. Practice for hell. Wages of sin, us crews of college kids working the open hearth shut down just a day before, busting still hot fire brick, else the old timers could reline it. Tough SOBs, we were our daddy's loyal boys. 15 minutes in, 45 out. Sweat off our brows hit the bricks we pitched into barges and sizzled like piss on a skillet. No problem, we bragged. Piece of cake. Steel toes of our boots took the 45 minutes just to cool off. Talk about hot-footing it. 19, 20 years old, we leaped in and out of that furnace 6 times every shift. Our foreman lurked safely away where river breeze sneaked through a niche of mill wall. We laughed at his belly and baldness, and at each midnight shift's beginning his solemn shaking of our hands. Good evening, boys. Be careful. So for kicks, we crossed the mill at lunch to stand on the catwalk as the ladles moved below. We looked down into them from around the shovels we held up to our faces to keep from losing eyebrows and lashes and skin. Looked down into the orange-white hot of cooked iron, rock and iron, center of a strange universe where steel was measured in gallons and fire poured like water, where fortunes for whole generations arose in bursts of oxygen and sirens, and the hair could go from your head in a stinking instant of smoke, or a hand rip off in a second, gone. before your body standing there even missed it. Thank you. Fortunately, I had, other than just the industrial experience, my dad made me a member of the Audubon Club in Steubenville, and it was named after a very famous teacher in Amsterdam, Ohio, Forrest Buchanan. And so this is a little poem about my initiation into a really rich and somewhat troubling initiation into the natural world. So, monthly meeting of the Audubon Club. Monday nights, once a month, they sit on folding chairs, Rosa, George, Myrtle, old Gambini, taking pleasure in their birds. Tonight, they plan their Christmas count of species, the song, predatory, marsh, and waterfowl that flock and somehow thrive for miles around these mills. That finished, the charter member steps up between fern and potted dumb cane to deliver this month's talk. Native and untraveled, I listen to his vivid Amazon unfold. Great dampnesses, morpho-flashing shadows, tribes intact, peaceful reaches on the river, no land-crazed settlers yet bringing history's slash and burn. Then he's finished. Silence sudden as nightfall in the tropics. Breathless, I stand and make my way through tea and cake and talk of tanagers to the door and open it. And though it is Steubenville outside, mill glow in the river sky, sulfur on the air, I feel a panther in the shrubbery to my right perk up. The lizard in the streetlights stir, and count the insects driven stunned against the headlamps of my father's car as we smash on stone the 1,000 necessary lives toward home. Thank you. My father got a piece of land down in southeastern Ohio. So to tell you the geography, it's 10 miles inland from New Matamoros. Okay? Just, head up the river. And way out Greenbrier Ridge, he had 15 acres. And when I was a little boy, he started to take me down there. And then, over the years that we shared that place, I watched him grow old. And one time he decided he was going to take a swim in the Little Muskingum River. And this is my father swimming in the country. More than half muskrat or beaver, gristle and gland heated to travel, going the old way of the oldest fathers of our kind, breathing more deeply than the woods at equinoctial noon, air poured out among the windy needles of white pine and leaping aspen leaves. He steers the green volutes of river, ripples running from his wrists and flanks to the world rim's weedy edge. Ahead, his heart attack. But this hour, this day, sky gleams prone and easy on the water, brilliant, without bottom, and into it he plunges to the place where we live and die alike. Osprey, slider, snail darter, so many fathers, so many sons. Seated ashore, my mind at work on gentle contradictions, I watch him carefully, a man going away from me, time lapping over his shoulders like a watery shroud, distance diminishing his body, struggle his glinting wake. Out there and in here, hearts linked by the bridge over air that's our name, we gather strength and spend it, we make ready and we risk. In a world whose borders are change, growing and failing together, I know now as he knows. Somewhere far up this sun-flashing river, he rests in his flesh that is me, even as I somehow labor toward him, though hunkered on stones in stillness, in a native and word-haunted shade. Thank you. Some of the family moved west, and my father's brother Jack settled in St. Joe, Missouri. And on a visit there, when I was probably college age or so, walked into his house, and there were two mandolins hanging on the wall right by the front door. And he pointed at one and he said, "That was your grandfather's favorite mandolin." And I said, "What the hell? Ironhead played the mandolin?" I had no idea. But it just opened up an entire past for me. And so he would often take me walks across the Market Street Bridge in Steubenville up into the hills of West Virginia. There's a couple of haul roads up there and places, and we'd go to all these places. And somehow that all became connected. The music of that walking became connected. So this is my grandfather's mandolin. All those years and miles we spent afoot out of Steubenville, across the bridge, on up the West Virginia hollows, then down the rip-rap haul roads into Follinsby, then north again on old Route 2, the swerving drivers shooting gravel off their tires. North, then west, across the bridge and back to Steubenville to make a neat, closed measure of our walking. All those years and miles. And every step along the way, near weed banks where May-apples drop their leaves like fans, or along the stony, coal dust washouts where the copper water stained the downridge rock, every step I see now was a perfect single note in the long song of our kinship. Yet not a word was ever passed between us of how you used to make another, gentler music. Now, surprised years later, I sit in hot Missouri on your second son's bright porch and try to tune what he tells me was your favorite mandolin. But it's memory that's tuned with every tightened key. And as the chords emerge from the loose years of their silence, a part of you I never knew is 6 years past your dying, newly born. Now I know the quiet of our hours in the willows by the river, fishing for shad we never caught, but hearing always, high above us on the banks, the old men singing in the gardens by the tracks, was part of something like a music you conducted, not for your own ears ruined by the railroad, but for mine, too young then to hear it. Today I do. Today my fingers, nimbler than I remember yours, unarthritic, familiar with guitars, find the frets for one sweet chord you must have played. On this late St. Joe porch, 1,000 miles from your grave, you lean against the railing, younger again than I am, stern angel, humming me home to your death. Thank you. Thanks. We're storytellers up here in these parts, and somewhere along the line I heard a fragment of a story, or at least I think I heard a fragment of a story, about some ancestor, some family relative, who would disappear for years and then show up secretly and leave a bag of groceries on the back porch at my grandparents' house. I thought, what's going on here? And I don't know whether it was true or one of those legends or not, but so I wrote this kind of a prosy little essay called "The Art of Creative Nonfiction." A great uncle of mine, whose name was never mentioned, lived as a hobo. He would appear now and again during the Depression years, walking up Logan Street in Steubenville from the river and the railroad tracks. He may have smelled like catfish or maybe coal smoke. There's no consensus in the family on his smell. But when he did show up, he would often leave a bag of groceries on the back porch. Where he got the money has been a matter of conjecture all these years. Maybe he robbed people. Maybe he worked as a mandolin busker in downtown Wheeling. A mandolin still survives in the family, though many claim it was my grandfather's. Maybe not. And the bag of groceries always contained a number of items: oranges, cans of sardines, once a 5-pound lump of bologna. My grandmother closed her eyes when slicing thick slabs of it for my grandfather's lunch. "Why did you close your eyes when you cut?" I asked her once. "It made the bologna go further," she said. On this, there was no consensus. My Uncle Paul reported there was never enough bologna. My Uncle Jack maintained it was bologna, bologna, bologna. Once I got so fed up with bologna that I went down to the river and seined a mess of crawfish from the sunken end of a barge and brought them home in a minnow bucket. I boiled them up on the stove, and your grandmother looked at me like I was a unicorn. On this, too, there is no consensus. It's all maybe, maybe not. My hobo uncle smelled like rose water, maybe like turpentine, maybe not. In this way, a family creates its story. Okay, this is going to be, this one's a challenge. I feel like an opera singer when I start this. I have to breathe a whole lot and then just hang on for dear life. So I taught as Mark mentioned, I taught for a long time, and I had a recalcitrant, impertinent young man named Thomas Breyer who just after I finished one of my little yarns about Steubenville, he said, "No way, Mr. Hague. Here's how I think it happened. I don't think you had any girlfriends ever in Steubenville. I don't think you knew anything about any good kind of music in Steubenville. I mean, really, what? WWVA? Come on." Or, I know, and then, and cars? You didn't, I bet you never had a car. I bet you had no friends who had cars. I bet you just walked. No. I know what you did, Mr. Hague. You rode the bus. No way, man. No way. When he was finished with this little spiel, a jukebox blew up in my head. And I just, what? And so this poem came as a response to that diss by Thomas Breyer. Thank you, Tommy. Buddy Holly's Glasses. Raise your hand. You know Buddy Holly. This is the right kind of crowd to know Buddy. I was worried there might be a whole bunch of young people say, "Who the hell's that?" Yeah. Buddy Holly's Glasses. And some of it's, true. Some of it's maybe. Whatever. Just enjoy. When Buddy Holly first kissed my cousin Peggy Sue in the back seat of Tommy Ciccolone's dad's stretch Cadillac Coupe de Ville while riding 93 miles an hour down Market Street in Steubenville, and just the day after my grandfather caught a 9-pound channel cat on rotten shrimp below the paper mill while fishing with Jimmy the Greek Snyder at 2:11 in the morning, and I watched it all happen. And really, just a week after Y.O. Santangelo in biology class jammed a dissecting needle clear through his thumb at the base of the nail and walked around with it unremoved all day, enjoying the most famous hours of his life. And I don't think much more than 6 years after I smoked that first Pall Mall in Wheeling at nature camp and fell to the ground right before supper, dizzy and gagging, and not more than a couple of decades before Richard Nixon resigned while I was living in a trailer in the woods and had the radio on, and for the first time in weeks, and I heard it all and treated myself to a 2-day spree and afterward went swimming naked in the creek. It was then that Buddy Holly took off his glasses so they wouldn't get smudged by Peggy Sue's makeup, and I said I'd hold them for him. And when the car stopped at the Elby's Big Boy in Weirton, West Virginia, for cheeseburgers and onion rings and showing off what great beauties we had attracted, I leaped out with those glasses on and ran down the middle of Freedom Way playing That'll Be the Day on air guitar. And 19 girls, including Madonna Jones and Desirina Castellini, leaped out of their cars and screamed my name, and I answered, "Good golly, Miss Molly." And not really much further back in time than when I rode my Harley Davidson 125, which I bought at Needengard's in downtown Steubenville with money I had saved from working at Junedale Meat Market and had not yet been busted by the Highway Patrol, who made me take off a morning from work to sit in the basement of the courthouse with other miscreants and malfeasants, none over the age of 16, and watched 2 hours of handmade film noir taken at the actual locations of fatal accidents in Ohio in which teenagers died. Trigger warning, it gets pretty graphic here, but that's what they subjected us to. So, what was in this film called Signal 30, I think? The blonde heads of homecoming queens rolling out from under flipped convertibles. The bodies of 2 basketball stars hanging dead from telephone wires 20 feet above the highway, not rebounding, nah, but having been thrown there by the narrator's style, the maniacal force of the impact, and followed up by the flattened torso of a dude in a tuxedo, folded 3 times under a rolled pickup truck, and who didn't quite make it to prom. And then after the movies were over, went back to Junedale's and for 5 gagging hours grubbed up bloody chuck roasts, slices of cold liver, 2-gallon buckets of half-frozen chitlins for drooling customers, and tried not to barf or even feel bad, though I much rather would have died and been thrown overboard off some stinking boat in the middle of the river and left to drown peacefully and happily. Not much beyond the time when I first met the famous Madonna Jones, named above, West Virginian, Irish-Italian, Madonna of the great front and rear, belle of the slag heaps and Harmon Creek, hair black and shiny as anthracite, sapphire eyes, pneumatic miracle of the mineral and biological, the spiritual and the gynecological, oh, tour of wonders, spate of the incredible, flood of the exponentially irrepressible. How the lights of the mills glowed. How the sky blushed red at midnight, and the blast furnace roared at its tapping, and the unit train to Pitcairn paused, panting diesel into the dark at Weirton Junction, and Bandini, the yardmaster, danced in his Pinocchio hat and cursed everything and everybody just on general principles. And how Madonna's chest heaved when I touched it with the very fingertips I'd licked the salt of my French fries off just before. And how her eyes closed and the lights of passing semis glazed her eyelids with the whitest milk of passion, and my hands felt for salvation even as I said her name and breathed it. And all the while, Buddy was in the front seat, talking music with Peggy Sue Despango, daughter of the vegetable king of Steubenville, artichokes, cauliflower, Italian parsley, eggplants, olives of a dozen kinds, and squinting because he couldn't see, because I was holding his glasses for him, and because I was also holding, two-handed, Madonna Jones. And I had put them down somewhere in the vast backness of seat of Tommy's daddy's Cadillac. So when Buddy snorted back, "God, give me my glasses, there's some things up here I got to see," just after I saw Peggy Sue free herself of her cashmere sweater, but not the little gold crucifix she wore at her throat, and I could tell they were both in a hurry and distracted and didn't have time for long explanations. And really, Madonna Jones was in no mood for talk either, what with one thing and another of her moving and sighing and moist. And I said, "Oh, shit, man, I lost them. I don't know where they are." And I had, and I didn't. And Madonna was already fading, the recently pliable heat of her going stiff like a cooling marshmallow. And it was almost as bad as the time when Scrap Iron Kuzakowski bragged he could eat an entire Cadillac and spent the whole spring of 1961 doing just that behind St. John's Arena in Steubenville. And for 2 or 3 months after he got out of the hospital, shit rust and washers and wrecked the radio reception wherever he hung out. But not before having told everybody, "Listen, my man here is cool," meaning me. "He'll finish the sucker." And I had to hide out for 3 weeks because I couldn't even bite through a wire, let alone a headlight or radiator or differential, engine block, and everybody knew it. But still, in the meantime, losing all the ground I'd covered with Denise Dynamite Baroni, queen of the ample, all garlic and nipples and golden olive oil curls. And Buddy yells from the front seat, "What you mean you lost them?" And I say, "Man, they just disappeared. I don't know." And Madonna says, "Oh, good grief, you can't be serious." And at that very moment, everything just goes out of me. All the starch and headway I've made, and I fall back into the seat of Tommy Ciccolone's dad's huge Cadillac Coupe de Ville with a back seat so big you need a map to find the ashtray. And it's all as bad as the time Charlie Parnell and Herbert Washington and Guido Federico and I were drinking Thunderbird. What's the word? Thunderbird. What's the price? 30 twice. How's it taste? Real nice. On Angel Trail. And I heard somebody coming up the steps. And so jammed the bottle down the back. We jammed the bottles down the backs of our pants. And it was the Bishop of Steubenville himself, out jogging long before anybody but felons and crazy people ran. And he recognized us as altar boys who served pontifical high mass at St. Peter's not long before. "How are you doing, boys?" he said, pausing, puffing the bishoply sweat in his armpits and across the flat of his belly. "And how are your parents?" And meanwhile, my bottle has gone sideways. And I can feel a wetness starting just at my belt and then running down my leg. And I know if I look down, I'll see a big pool of Thunderbirds spreading out like a spilled moon from my left foot. And I can smell it. And I know His Excellency can or soon will too. And as a matter of fact, at that very moment, he looks down and sees it and steps back and says, I swear he said it, "What the hell?" It's then, at that very moment, that life is as bad as when Buddy Holly asked me for his glasses and I couldn't find them. This sermon beginning, come on in, Your Excellency, you can listen to. This is what growing up consists of. These moments of absolute clarity absolute doltishness, moments in which it is utterly impossible to fail any more miserably than you have, screw-ups of the first magnitude, and always getting caught. Theory. Adolescence is a state of dream in waking. The most unpredictable poetry, the most random of randomnesses, the most tripping up of trip-ups. And anything can happen and will, just as a cigar in this dream called adolescence is never a cigar, nor a vase, nor a fur muff, but each is a part of the huge dirty joke your flesh has dragged you into, male or female, priests and nuns notwithstanding, your parents notwithstanding, the very bishop himself in all his excellency notwithstanding. And even the smartest kid in the senior class can and will screw up royally. And one innocent and unsuspecting evening, the absolute monarch of disaster, summa cum laude of stupidity, in plain sight of his most secretly desired and most impossible girl, Madonna Jones, Dynamite Baroni, Peggy Sue, the entire zodiac of beauty, woman, and desire. And this is what makes life bearable, after all, that everyone screws up, that everyone sees everyone screw up, and a kind of democracy arises in which no one is more king or queen of dumb than anyone else. Let us all show our underwear at assembly on the opening day of high school. Let us all belch as we step to the mic at prom. Let us all be depantsed in front of our girlfriends at the beginning of Lent. Let us all get caught smoking in the John. Oh, that'll be the day. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thanks Thomas Breyer again for that little diss of me that set that jukebox off in my head. A little bit of a change now. See how we're doing here. Yeah. Another poem that's connected with my teaching, though, is at one point I was director of writing across the curriculum and writing to learn. I finally talked the administration into the idea that writing in any class may be a helpful thing. So I was embedded by the principal in the advanced biology class. And I had a lab partner. It was the principal's son. She wanted to keep an eye on me, you know. And so I did all the things and took all the tests and did all the labs and everything. And this is what, you know, the question was, is there any subject matter in a biology class, let's say, for writing poetry? And you know, I got the kids to respond, but boy, I got this one. So there was one afternoon where the teachers showed a film on the subject of decomposition. Yes, so it's this poem. Time-lapse photography. A mouse corpse devoured by maggots. At first, the grave, familiar scene, a mouse lies among stones and weeds like a painter's subject in a tiny landscape of ruin. This, we say, this is what we know of death: arrest of motion, frigidity, bleak consummation of life's fling and jig. Death, we know, holds still. But then the mouse's body swells, flexes, rolls, seems almost to dance in place. Supermouse muscles bunch beneath its coat, rippling its flanks like the waves of an earthquake approaching and departing. Maggots en masse, migrating from organ to organ, feed to feed. Meanwhile, its claws tap rhythm on the ground. It even shakes its mousy booty. Then, as if spent in convulsions of laughter or grief, collapsing, matted fur parting, small bones erupting from the carrion. It implodes at last, flat smear of darkness in the stricken field, while its soul, transformed, now voiced and winged, ascends, a cloud of thick black flies that sport and hiss on the stinking air, and innocent as fresh angels carry the dance away. People say, "Oh my, that's gross. That's very, very gross." Yeah, okay. Poetry lives where it lives, and it's there waiting for us to see it. I wrote a series of poems about cosmology and physics, and of course, as I was exploring those subjects, it inevitably led me down the rabbit hole of the atomic bomb. So at the end of that whole sequence of poems, this poem arose. It's called Dawn. You'll hear what the title means here in a minute. August 6, 1945. In hardly more than the time it takes light to travel across a proton, her skin was blistered and razed by Pika, the flash, then flayed from her flesh by the blast wave, dawn, which means boom. All this in something unnameable as instant. Mute and deaf somnambulist, she stumbled forward, one of several thousand high school girls out that morning in the sun, working in the city. Now, her hands held out before her, gloves of her own skin hanging from her wrists, the shadow of her back peeled and draped like a blouse wrapped loosely around her waist, like a cloud of skin come loose from the sky of herself. Many like her, in silent procession, headed that morning to the 7 boiling rivers of Hiroshima, seeths of black and red smoke roiling above them, lengthy cauldrons cooking blood and ash and scintilla of children and factories and birds, but found only corpses and the dying clogging the banks, those still surviving, unable to lower their ruined arms, as if holding the ghosts of themselves like partners in a dance. Nor did the river stop the fires. Flames leaped them and firestormed what was left. Cisterns filled with dead so tightly packed they perished standing up. Roasted fathers the size of dogs on ruined streets. And then, later in the day, a cold rain, black with soot, brought from air radiation's slow fire into every wound and crevice. Burning rain, killing rain, water transmuted into fire and the alchemies of horror, knowledge, fear, power, darkness, time. If only I had known, I should have become a watchmaker, said Einstein near the end of his life. This book, Continued Cases, is a follow-up to this, Public Hearings, where Buddy Holly was, and some other poems, because things hadn't improved very much since the public hearings of these poems. You know, the judgments were not in, the sentences were not cast. And so I had to write Continued Cases to remind us there's a whole lot of unfinished business in our country. So there's a whole sequence of poems about the reign of 45, and this is one of them. The three quotations at the beginning of this are verbatim quotations by himself during his first reign. We won 2 world wars. 2 world wars, beautiful wars that were vicious and horrible. And then talking about the munitions he would send to Iran, we're going to send him brand new, beautiful equipment. And then on the violent law enforcement after the Minnesota protests, there's something beautiful about that when you're watching everybody get pushed around. There's something very beautiful about that. Beautiful. As the bones of Anzio were beautiful, as the Western Front was beautiful, as our grandfathers' wounds in Belgium were beautiful, as the Banzai attacks on Saipan were beautiful, as Hamburger Hill was beautiful, and Khe Sanh and Ya Drang were beautiful, as the blood under the sky of Gettysburg was beautiful, as the drowned children along the border are beautiful, as the poisoning of the rivers is beautiful, as the tear gassing of protesters is beautiful, as the knee on the neck is beautiful, as the years in Guantanamo are beautiful, as the maskless in crowds are beautiful, as the COVID burials are beautiful, as the AK-47 is beautiful, as the methane leaks are beautiful, as the wildfires are beautiful, as any very stable genius beautiful. Thanks. I'll end on we can laugh again. But you know, my poems over the years that I've been writing have been alternately lighthearted and alternately very heavy. That's what I was given. You know, that's just what I was given. So there's a very famous poem that students of poetry in the 20th century know about. It's by Wallace Stevens, and it's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. And it's a very famous poem. It's kind of Zen-ish. It's kind of imagistic. It's kind of philosophical, very serious, very, very interesting poem. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. Possum Variations. 1. And of course it's a Roman numeral because that's what we need is a Roman numeral in such a serious subject. 1. Uncle Mike lived in a white shed on the edge of Beatty Hollow, just a short spit from his coonhounds. Said he'd never stoop to eat a possum. His coonhounds never said, but then they didn't ever eat a possum either. 2. The possum is not a pig, not so smart, nor can it bite a $50-sized moon of flesh from your leg. It works smaller, neat as a coon, chintzy as a cat. After it feeds, it drinks from a ditch, then sleeps upside down in a gum tree. 3. Everyone knows the possum has a sack for carrying young, like a kangaroo. But no one knows how high a possum can jump. Thus the people in possum country fasten screens tight to their attic windows, just to be sure. 4. A possum once swam the Ohio River from Fallensby, West Virginia, to Mingo Junction, Ohio, then back to Fallensby, West Virginia. 5. Despite its marsupialism and omnivorous diet, despite its mysterious stringy fur and unusual prehensile tail, despite its minuscule young, pink as expensive boiled shrimp, everyone knows that a possum puts its pants on one leg at a time, just like you and me. 6. Many noble animals, fox, squirrels, titmice, woodchucks, coons, praying mantises, and ants, live peacefully with their possum neighbors. Some of them are even best friends. Ticks and possums, for example, or possums and intestinal worms. 7. You will never see a possum playing in the snow. You will never see a possum wearing a second-hand coat. You will never hear of the anal gland of a possum being made into French perfume. These things are not natural to the possum. 8. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and a possum ain't. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Oh, goodness. I wanted to have some time for questions. Is that okay? Or comments or arguments or whatever. Yeah, there's a few up here.
If you do have a question, raise your hand. I'll come to you.
Do you play the mandolin?
I do not. I play guitar. Yeah. I wish I could play the mandolin. It's a lot faster than a guitar.
Over the years, have you found it easier or harder to teach poetry to students?
It's hard to tell because they're staring in their laps so often. What's down there that's so interesting? You know, it's not a good question to ask a bunch of adolescents. Yeah. So you got to have a sense of humor. No, I think we had a good time. I think we had very productive time for most of my career. Yeah. Once I got the hang of it, once I figured out how their heads worked, or didn't. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. And I taught poetry writing, taught the study of poetry, and so looked at it from many sides. And I was very much a interdisciplinary kind of guy, so we would do performances of poems. We did poetry out loud at our school, and so it was a very living and vibrant part of our school culture. Mm-hmm.
1,000 years ago, as an English teacher, a very young student teacher, and students were amazed that songs were poetry. And teaching poetry through songs often was a way to get through to students.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you bet. I especially I got them all turned on to the old English ballads, and I made many CDs that had like various versions of Barbara Allen, for example. They were utterly amazed. Hear Dolly Parton doing Barbara Allen. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The music's part of it was very productive.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay,
thank you.
well, thank you very much. Thank you all. Thanks.